One of the most tragic results of marijuana prohibition I have witnessed in the 35 years of my organization. These are the words of Keith Stroop, Executive Director for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. He was referring to the case of Jonathan Magby, a 27-year-old quadriplegic man from Washington, D.C. Jonathan died in jail due to inadequate health care, including a prison official's failure to provide him with a ventilator. Jonathan was incarcerated on a minor marijuana charge. Even the prosecutor in the case pushed for probation time, but the judge decided this was not harsh enough because the defendant told pre-sentence investigators that he would continue to use marijuana because it made him feel better. Keith Stroop said he didn't deserve to die for smoking marijuana. Now, although this statement is a bit sensational, it does show the callousness that many Americans have when talking about cannabis. Hello, I'm Brandon Cowart. I just gave you one small example of the dangers of the prohibition of pot. In the next few minutes, I hope to convince you all that marijuana, in no uncertain terms, should be fully legalized. I will parallel the current prohibition with that of alcohol, disprove a few common misconceptions about marijuana, and try to illustrate some of the benefits of legalization. First, before I can tell you about why the laws against weed today are so similar to alcohol prohibition, let me explain to you a little bit about the noble experiment, as it was called. And now, in the early parts of the 20th century, members of groups like the Anti-Saloon League and many women's church groups believed that banning alcohol would solve most of the problems associated with alcoholic intoxication. In 1919, Congress passed the 18th Amendment, officially banning the sale and consumption of alcohol. One famous pastor by the name of Billy Sunday was quoted as saying, "The reign of tears is over. The slums will soon be a memory. We will turn our prisons into factories and our jails into storehouses and corn cribs. Men will walk upright now, women will smile, and the children will laugh. Hell will be forever for rent." Now, soon after Prohibition began, sales and consumption of alcohol went down drastically. In the early 20s, it dropped down to 30%. Later in the decade, though, the innovative prowess of Americans became apparent with the birth of bootleggers, speakeasies, and rum runners. Soon, the use of alcohol actually increased to higher rates than before pre-prohibition levels, as for the first time alcohol became fashionable at places called speakeasies. Drinking wasn't the only thing going on at these places either. In establishments where crime is already being committed, gambling and prostitution fit right in. Prohibition also gave rise to political corruption and organized crime. Al Capone, among others, used violence and money to get by the law. For every year Prohibition was in effect, the murder rate in America rose. In 1932, Congress finally repealed the 18th Amendment. Consumption soon leveled off once again. Violence and other crime rates soon also fell. Many of these same problems have arisen with marijuana prohibition. Organized crime has taken over certain parts of America because it's the only way for weed to be sold. These days, as with the old, usually good people that smoke pot are now forced to associate with more hardcore criminals. As with alcohol, marijuana is extremely easy to get. Some people may not think it is, but that's just one of the many misconceptions surrounding cannabis today. Another misconception is that it is a gateway drug, but it's not. But much like alcohol in the 1930s, it's the exposure of those who buy weed to more hardcore criminals that causes this gateway effect. Legalized marijuana would defuse this problem. Another misconception is that weed kills brain cells. If marijuana kills brain cells at the rate that some claim, then some of the brightest minds from the last century, from artists like Allen Ginsberg and Edgar Allan Poe, to presidents like Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, and just plain geniuses like Carl Sagan and Sigmund Freud, must have had the antidote. The original claim that marijuana kills brain cells came from a government test in 1974. The test was administered by pumping several monkeys with 200 times the amount of smoke that would be considered a psychoactive amount for a human. In addition, these tests were done by putting gas masks on monkeys' faces so that they were literally being deprived of oxygen and only breathing in THC smoke. It was later on proven that the monkeys' brain cells died due to a lack of oxygen. 12 years later, the test was redone without the extreme conditions. Monkeys were pumped with 4 to 5 joints worth of pot once a day for 7 months and showed zero sign of brain deterioration at the end. But we can't just legalize something because it's not completely bad for you. There needs to be some benefit society would get in return. Well, luckily, the cannabis plant has tons. In legalizing cannabis, we would once again use hemp. Hemp does not contain enough THC to get high, but it is still legal. Hemp is a superfiber. It's cheaper than cotton and makes better cloth than cotton. Hemp is known for its rich oil and high in protein content, and is commonly used in health foods. Hemp can even be made to use a fuel similar to ethanol. Hemp is grown with a less of an impact on the earth than cotton because it does not need all the pesticides. One more benefit, it makes economic sense. Like alcohol and tobacco, if legalized, marijuana could be taxed. It would save approximately $7.7 billion a year normally spent trying to uselessly enforce prohibition, and could generate approximately $6.2 billion with a sin tax similar to alcohol and tobacco, according to a group of over 500 economists that recently wrote the president. Because of American soil, we could be world leaders in hemp and marijuana production, giving many farmers jobs. And of course, not giving medical marijuana to people who need it is just cruel. Marijuana gives patients going through chemotherapy a way to eat. If you ever heard of the munchies, weed does that for chemo patients that can't eat otherwise. Weed also helps them with the pain. Crime is a terrible consequence of prohibition. Criminals love the fact that weed remains illegal because it keeps business profitable. Marijuana is not illegal because it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it's illegal. Drug production and drug trafficking are both dangerous in nature because of the illegality. And like alcohol prohibition, it breeds a criminal element and political corruption. We also have overcrowded jails. In 2008, there were 841,863 arrests in the U.S. on marijuana charges. And of all the reasons I've given, I believe that crime is the most pressing reason why we should legalize marijuana. I hope that I've been able to convince at least some of you why we should legalize this substance. It is a product that is safe, effective at helping sick people out. We can make all sorts of things out of the plant. It makes economic sense, and hundreds of thousands of people have their lives ruined every year due to its criminal status. Please vote, write your congressman, and do anything that you can to remove the stigma from marijuana. And if you have any questions or comments, please post, and I will do anything I can to answer. Thank you.